One of my favorite parts of Across the Spider-Verse is the really sweet moments between Miles and Gwen. There's this one line that Miles says to her that I think is going to be super important in the next movie Beyond the Spider-Verse. So, in the movie, Gwen tells Miles that in all the other universes, her versions have fallen for Spider-Man, but it's always ended really badly for her. You can tell this has made her really scared to open up her heart and let herself fall for Miles, even though it's clear they have this special connection. But then Miles says something that totally changes her mood and the way she's looking at things. He just casually says, "There's a first time for everything." It's not this big dramatic line or anything, but it really seems to hit Gwen in a profound way. After Miles says that, Gwen doesn't say anything back, she just kind of leans her shoulder against his, almost like she's silently agreeing with him. Like she's thinking, yeah, maybe you're right, maybe this time could be different. One thing I've noticed about Gwen's character is that when she's having a hard time expressing her feelings out loud, she tends to use physical touch instead. In the whole movie, the only people she actually hugs are Miles and her dad. It's almost like those hugs are her way of showing how much she cares when she can't find the right words. And let's be honest, the connection that Miles and Gwen have is just so sweet and genuine. Their interactions are definitely some of the most meaningful and emotional moments in the film. There's also this really cool little detail in that same scene where they are hanging out in the clock tower that I thought was super interesting. So Gwen is telling Miles about how in every other universe, her versions have fallen for Spider-Man, but it always ends up going really badly for her. And as she's saying this, you notice that she's looking up, right? And since they're upside down, that means she's actually looking out at the city, almost like she's seeing all the possibilities and hope in their relationship. But then when she gets to the part about how it never ends well, she looks down. And since they're flipped, that down is actually the wide open sky. It's like she's looking into this dark empty void and the fate that she thinks she might have if she lets herself fall for Miles. It's such a tiny little detail, but it just speaks volumes about what Gwen was feeling in that moment. She was torn between wanting to open herself up to something new and amazing, but also terrified of her so tragic fate. The way the directors used the upside-down perspective to visually represent that inner conflict was just so clever. And then in that same scene, there's another moment that I thought was just beautiful. When Miles says that thing about how there's a first time for everything, Gwen leans her shoulder against his, but since they're upside down should make that physically impossible, but Gwen just defies gravity to get close to him. You can really feel the deep connection between them, and let's be honest, that's a beautiful shot. Miles is really positive. You can tell he's trying to give Gwen hope. He was basically saying that maybe this time things might be different between them, but the thing is, Gwen wasn't being fully honest with him. She was holding back the truth about his dad's death, because she was terrified of what would happen if Miles found out. Gwen knew that if Miles tried to save his dad, it could end up destroying his entire universe, and even Miles himself. So she decides to keep this crucial information from him, thinking it will protect him. But what she didn't realize is that by doing that, she was going to end up hurting him anyway. She was so focused on preventing the potential disaster that she didn't see how her actions would crush Miles' heart in the end. It's such a complex situation, because you can totally understand where both of them are coming from. On one side, you've got Gwen, who knows the devastating consequences that could come from Miles finding out the truth. She was trying to save him and his universe, even if it means keeping him in the dark. And then on the other side, you've got Miles, who obviously got hurt by all this, which is completely understandable. He felt betrayed by her actions because she was the person he trusted the most, but her fear of the truth ends up getting in the way. Gwen really thought that hiding the truth from him was the best thing to do, but in reality, it was the exact opposite of what she was trying to avoid, which is hurting him.
You're really not helping.
We saw the way you lit up around her. I just hope she doesn't get him hurt.
It's such a heartbreaking situation because you can see both of their perspectives and how much they care about each other. You know, it's really interesting how Gwen's character goes through this big transformation over the course of Across the Spider-Verse. At first, she was kind of blindly following along with Miguel and the whole Spider Society, even when they were going after Miles. But then at some point, Gwen has this realization that she's made the wrong choice. She finally decided to break away from the Spider Society and forge her own path, just like Miles has been doing the whole time. By the end of the first part of the movie, she is a totally different person. Her character has gone through this amazing development, even though her whole story arc isn't finished yet. It's just so cool to see how much Gwen grows and changes over the course of the film. She's been through a lot, maybe not as much as Miles, but still a ton. And she still has some work to do to make things right with him, to tell him how much he really means to her after everything that's happened between them. But one of the things that really helped drive Gwen's transformation is Miles himself. He gave her this sense of hope and courage to fight for what she knows is right, even if it means going against the Spider Society that she was a part of before.
We are supposed to be the good guys.
There's so much on the line. His dad, his mom, or even Gwen herself could be in danger in Beyond the Spider-Verse, but I have this feeling that Miles might be the one Spider-Man who finally breaks the pattern of having to sacrifice everything to be a hero. I could be wrong, but it would be amazing to see at least one Spider-Person get their happy ending, and I can't wait to see how Gwen and Miles' story continues in the final movie. They've both grown and changed so much, and I'm really rooting for them to find a way to be together, even with all the crazy challenges they're facing. Gwen's character arc is far from over, and I'm excited to see her finally get that redemption with Miles and be able to tell him how much he means to her. The sad thing is that Spider-Man is not known for having happy endings. Just look at what happened to Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man. He lost pretty much everything in the end. And since this is probably the last movie in the trilogy, giving Miles a happy ending would be awesome. I know Miles' relationship with Gwen is going to play a very important role in the next movie because their bond is just so deep and meaningful, and there's clearly a lot of unresolved romantic tension there. Also, I can't forget about the dynamic between our Miles and Prowler Miles, which is probably going to be very important too. I can't wait to see how that whole situation plays out, especially with Gwen's team and Miguel's team probably going head-to-head at some point. Miles' parents, especially his mom, might play an important role too. It's just such a complex situation. On one hand, you've got the tragic history of Spider-Man stories, where the hero always seems to lose so much. But on the other hand, Miles deserves to find some happiness, especially with the people he loves. I have a feeling the final movie is going to be an absolute roller coaster. There's going to be so much at stake: Miles' relationships, his family, the fate of the multiverse. But I really hope somehow, Miles can break that tragic Spider-Man mold and get the happy ending he truly deserves.